A massive update has been released today involving YNW Melly. YNW Melly's trial is now to start officially in 175 days, which is March 7th in 2022. Now I have exclusive information to share about it, which could result in YNW Melly's release from jail for good. Now let's get straight into this. So as reported by many news outlets on November 30th, YNW Melly had his last court hearing until his trial starts. YNW Melly's trial is set to begin on March 7th in 2022. Prosecutors have asked YNW Melly for his DNA as well as his body measurements so they can recreate the crime scene on what they believed happened the night Juvy and Sakchaser sadly passed. So YNW Melly and his lawyers agreed to giving prosecutors that information in exchange for a speedy trial, which can mean many different things. YNW Melly and his lawyers are asking for a speedy trial for a huge reason, as with the trial starting in 175 days, if prosecutors are not ready and don't have valid evidence in 175 days to sentence Melly to life in prison, then YNW Melly will be officially released and all charges will be dropped. All of YNW Melly's charges will be discharged forever due to the Florida law. Law enforcement has needed years now to gain evidence on YNW Melly. Melly and his lawyers are now taking the gamble, hoping that they will not come up with any sort of significant evidence with the speedy trial that they're demanding. But in this court hearing, we're given an update as to why law enforcement wanted YNW Melly's DNA. So in case you're unaware, on October 20th, YNW Melly's court files were updated for the first time in a while. Prosecutors were requesting the Broward County judge to force YNW Melly to provide his DNA in order to solve the case. YNW Melly's lawyers today in court asked what's even the point of needing YNW Melly's DNA to figure out if he was in the car when Juvy and Sakchaser passed, when YNW Melly has already admitted to being in the car with them the entire time the so-called drive-by occurred. It was at this point when the prosecutors ended up going silent and even allegedly motioned a recess in the courtroom, which is honestly very strange, as it seems as if YNW Melly's lawyers caught them in a trap. It almost seems as if the prosecutors are practically reaching for evidence the best they can, although they do still have some very concerning evidence as shown in the courtroom today at the time of this recording. Now I was able to pull evidence from the court files from the court website. It actually starts by saying, and I quote, "Then also, we have a video of Mr. Demons admitting to doing an act towards two individuals in the head." Now I had to change a few of the words in that statement, but you understand at what I'm trying to say. They spoke about this in court. Allegedly, there's a video on YNW Melly's cell phone, which was confiscated from YNW Melly's manager, known as 100K Management. And on this video, it's somebody recording YNW Melly with him doing a hand gesture of a firearm and then him pretty much admitting to taking out two individuals. As it states in the next court document, it says, and I quote, "This video was on Mr. Demon's cell phone, which was brought to my office by Jameson Francis, and that is how we had that, and that was all of the evidence that Your Honor has." Now, Jameson Francis is YNW Melly's manager's real name. He's known as 100K Management. He was the man holding YNW Melly's cell phone for the entire time he's been arrested. So the next court file says, and I quote, "These particular cell phones, which were both iPhone 10s, were on the T-Mobile network." And so T-Mobile has a very interesting feature where it will tell you the environment that the cell phone is in. So from these cell phone records, I can tell you the exact moment Demons got out of the car and staged the drive-by location. Now right here is the exact reason as to why YNW Melly's court case has now lasted for a few years. It's because YNW Melly took 40 minutes to get YNW Juvy and Sakchaser medical attention after a so-called drive-by occurred. Law enforcement don't believe the story of YNW Melly and YNW Portland being in total shock, not knowing what to do, and not calling an ambulance for those reasons. And that is actually why the court case is still open. Now all of this evidence is crucial against YNW Melly once you hear the timeline of what law enforcement believed happened the day Juvy and Sakchaser sadly passed. Now it starts on October 26 in 2018. At roughly 3:30 in the morning, YNW Melly, YNW Juvy, YNW Sakchaser, and YNW Portland were all at a recording studio getting work done for a new project that YNW Melly was working on until their session was over. Once their studio session was over, they all hopped into their Jeep and started heading home. At the time, all four of them were allegedly living together, so it's very common for them to be out together almost every day and driving home together every single day. Now the driver of the vehicle being Cortland Henry, otherwise known as YNW Portland, had YNW Melly sitting directly behind him. YNW Portland ended up driving on a back road home. This was to allegedly skip early morning traffic, and while law enforcement doesn't know exactly what happened inside of the car on the ride home, YNW Melly says that a so-called drive-by occurred. YNW Melly and his boys were all driving home when they were quickly swarmed by a vehicle which had individuals hop out of the vehicle and do a drive-by on them. But what law enforcement believes is that YNW Portland pulled the car over to the side of the road. Mind you, this is on a back street, so there is no street cameras, and there's not really that many witnesses, especially at 3:30 in the morning. But once the car was pulled over, a distraction was made inside of the vehicle to catch Juvy and Sakchaser off guard, while YNW Melly did the act towards them in the vehicle. Law enforcement believe it was YNW Melly who did the act due to YNW Melly sending his girlfriend at the time a Snapchat 2 weeks later saying, and I quote, "I kept Portland with me because at the end of the day, he did one of the realest stuff in my life." Now this could be YNW Melly's way of thanking Portland for remaining loyal and not snitching. After the act was done, the Jeep was then brought into a side parking lot where no one was in sight and nobody could hear a firearm being used. This is when law enforcement believed that YNW Melly and Portland roughed up the vehicle, making it appear as if it went through a drive-by, and this would also be the location of where YNW Melly said the drive-by happened. This would be their excuse for YNW Melly and Portland bringing Sakchaser and Juvy to the hospital finally for medical attention. Now that could make sense as to why it took 40 minutes to get Juvy and Sakchaser medical attention, but I don't want to believe that's what happened. It wasn't until February 13th where YNW Melly was finally brought into jail for the act, which led to Juvy and Sakchaser's passing. YNW Portland was also brought into jail for 2 counts of accessory of helping YNW Melly cover it up. And right there is your complete and new update on YNW Melly's court case. Let's hope that in 175 days, prosecutors don't have enough evidence to lock YNW Melly up for the rest of his life. Anyways guys, this has been District Trending, and I'm ending the video here. I'm out. Peace.